It's noon. I think we could go ahead and get started. I should back up.
Yeah, but this guy, there you go. Now you're
There we go. All right, for the all-important announcement. Thanks everybody for coming out over your lunch hour to Agosto, our kind of longtime GDG Twin Cities host and all-around sponsor BFF. So huge thanks to Agosto for sponsoring the food and the drink and the space. Thanks so much. Usually we allow some time at the beginning for our sponsors. I don't know, Paul, if anybody wants to say anything about Agosto to the group.
Nick, you want to just do a little
I guess.
short spiel?
Thank you guys for coming. Those of you who have been here, I feel like I recognize most faces. Bathrooms are out past the front door, right to the right, you'll see them. Other than that, thank you for coming. If you have any questions about potentially working in the future, we don't have a ton of needs right now, but it should open up in the near term. If you have any questions or just want to talk in general, come find me at the end. Turn it back over to Lloyd.
All right, thanks so much. I'm going to keep the announcements to a minimum. I think most folks know what GDG is. If you haven't registered on Meetup, sign up there and you get all of our future announcements. Kind of our big announcement that we want to make folks aware of. Our call for speakers is up right now for our DevFest event. Our DevFest event is our big conference. We'll probably have around 500 attendees. It's a single day event. Probably have 5 or 6 tracks throughout the day. People from Google, people from lots of local companies. It's an incredible event. We'd love to have your proposal on a talk to make it a really good event run by the community, for the community. So that announcement is on our Meetup page as well. If you have any questions about that, talk to me or Paul, or Patrick is also in the back. So without any further ado, I think I'd love to move it over to our main event, which is, we're really thrilled to have Andrew Lee, one of the founders of Firebase here, and Paul to have our fireside chat.
All right. Well, Andrew, thanks so much for coming, taking a stop by. We're actually going to the same conference tomorrow morning, and we had an opportunity to pull them over here for, we're kind of coming up the learning curve on Firebase. Pretty excited about what it's doing for the development we're doing here at Agosto, both for customers and our SkyKit product. And so I thought it was a great opportunity for us just to hear a lot more about the history of Firebase, how it all got started. I don't really know the story, and Andrew hasn't seen my questions, so I thought this would make it really fun and interesting. Also want to just have really anyone just throw out some questions along the way here if something comes to mind. I probably have enough to keep us going, but if you've got questions or things you want to talk about, just raise your hand and we'll work it in. So Andrew, founder of Firebase, you can correct all my numbers if I'm wrong. Started in 2011, was founded in 2011?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me. The story's a long story, so I can go back even farther if you like. So I actually grew up in Minnesota here.
I would love to hear
I'm
about
a native.
what you've grown up here.
School at St. Thomas, you know where that is. And then I went to college in Indiana, that's where Coleman. I had a real job for a little while, and in 2007, I quit my job in December 2007, about 10 years ago, and I started working together with a co-founder, and we tried a bunch of things, and for about 3.5 years, we tried miscellaneous things that didn't work.
Okay, so you got to go into that, because that's really interesting. So because a lot of us have been through that part of it, trying a lot of things that didn't work. So I'd kind of like to just hear, just to kind of ground the conversation.
Yeah, when we started that, I had some money saved up, and I thought, we'll spend a couple of years, and within a couple of years, we'll have a big thriving business, I'm sure. And we tried all kinds of things. The first thing we tried to do was sort of an experts marketplace. The idea being you go on the website and you can find other people that are experts on the topic, and you can video conference with them, and you'll pay them a fee to do so. And that one never got off the ground. Then we did a biometric device for the iPhone before they had their own fingerprint sensor. Turns out that was a great idea, but we were not successful in that space. And then we had kind of a social network app that we built, which eventually morphed into a chat product. So if you remember when the Facebook chat widget was new, you had a little toolbar that lets you chat with your friends. We built a product like that, but embeddable on other websites, so that developers could pay us to put that on the website. And that one kind of sort of worked. We got some revenue. We actually at one point were cash flow positive, excluding our own salaries. And that ended up morphing into a more developer-focused product, which was the Firebase database, which then turned into Firebase, which is the thing that you see today.
So in those early tries, what did you kind of figure out and learn and along the way? Like what were some of the key lessons that you took away from those early
lots
tries?
Of lessons. I think the most important lesson was learning how to do like a customer-driven development process. So our original naive approach was assuming that, hey, we're really smart and we should just think really hard and come up with great solutions and build those and everyone will love them. And it turns out that no matter how smart you are, it's very rare that you actually have any idea what the customer actually wants. And the only way to really find out what a customer actually wants is to ask them. To ask lots of them and have a process where you're sort of working with them to build the thing that they want. And if you do that with enough people, you'll eventually build something that lots of people want, and that's what we end up with Firebase. So we messed that up on the first 4 or 5. With Firebase, we sort of gave up on the idea that we were smart and better than people and said, we're just going to sit down with a bunch of developers, we're going to ask them what they want, we're going to show them what we built, we're going to ask them if they like it, and we're going to do it over and over and over again until they really like it, and then we're going to launch that. And that was the database product.
So just before we go into involved in Firebase and how you got all that going, so going back to like your early days in high school, were you thinking I'm gonna go build products someday, or what were you thinking when you were high school age? Was I know your father who's right over here, Donald. He's in the computer industry, so there had to be a lot of influence there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been doing software. My dad's been in the industry for quite a long time. I've been doing software things since a very young age. My dad and I started an ISP back in like 97 or 98 out of our basement. iCompute.com, check it out.
Does it still run?
It still runs. It still runs. And that was kind of my early exposure. And then I did a bit of consulting in high school as well for some customers in the area, and then I had some internships. I worked at Adobe here in cities. I worked at Seagate, and then after school I got a job out in Southern California. So yeah, I've been doing this a long time. I had long wanted to start a business. I actually, like all through college, I had 2 lists that I maintained. One was a list of startup ideas, and one was a list of people I wanted to work with. And I just, every time I had an idea, I wrote it down. Every time I met something interesting, I wrote it down. And it turns out that eventually the startup that I built was not on the list of ideas, and the person I did it with was not on the list of names. But the exercise, I think, was beneficial.
Awesome. So tell us about the first kind of how Firebase got started and that whole idea. And did you actually use an approach of going out and finding out what the world really needed?
We did. So we had this chat product involved, which was used by a bunch of websites. It was actually the most popular customers were musicians. They would have it on their fan sites. So people like Ricky Martin and Limp Bizkit and One Direction and all these bands would have it. And the fans would come on there and they'd chat with each other, and they would chat with Ricky Martin or whoever. This ended up being kind of our main source of income, was these A-list musicians. And we went and talked to Universal Music, and we said, hey, what do you guys like about the chat product? And they said, well, we don't really like it, right? Like, we hate this about the interface, and we wish you would do this, and we wish you would do this. And we said, well, why do you guys use it then? And they're like, well, we have a team of like 3 engineers. We don't have time to build the backend service. Like, all we have time to do is build the UI. We really have to outsource this component. And what we really like is the ability to build our own user interface on top of a backend that we don't have to manage. And we thought, okay, well, they're spending most of the money on us, so we should probably listen to them. And we went and talked to a bunch of other customers sort of in a similar vein and say, hey, if we took our chat product and just threw away the UI, which, by the way, we spent like a year plus working on, just threw that out, like, would you be interested in using it? And they all said, oh, yeah, that would be much better. And so that was sort of the genesis of like, hey, maybe if we stop trying to tell people what the UI should look like and just gave them APIs and let them build things, we'd be able to capture some of these higher-end customers that are willing to pay for this stuff. And we then started working on what that would look like for chat specifically, and figured out very quickly that the types of primitives that you need to build a chat application is actually very similar to the types of primitives you need to build all kinds of stuff. It's all, under the hood, it's all data sync and storage. And so we dropped down a level and we built a database product essentially, and launched that in, we started working on that in the summer of 2011. We launched it publicly in April of 2012. And then from there was a private beta period for a while. We opened it up to the public in early 2013. And there were a couple of fundraising steps along the way, and then it eventually grew to the size that Google became interested in. We sold to Google in October of 2014.
So did some of the original users from the music industry, were they using this API, or did you find yourself a whole new set of customers?
Some of them came over. So I think one of the notable ones is, are you familiar with the TV show Big Brother? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the chat interface on the Big Brother website is a Firebase database powered thing. They used to be using some other stuff from us back in the day. So they're one of those. There's a few of those customers, but I'm sure it's 0.01% or something.
So now your partner involved was James.
James Tamplin.
He's still at Google. I see him on the videos all the time.
He's a high school friend of mine. We've stayed in touch ever since, and we've been working together about 10 years now.
So how did you kind of reconnect with him, and why him if he wasn't on your list?
Yeah, so I had that list, and I went through the list person by person, and I called them all up and said, hey, you should quit your jobs and we should do something together. And it turns out that all the smartest people I knew were gainfully employed and didn't think that was such a good idea. And I got rejected by everyone, and so I was kind of bummed out. And I came home to visit my parents, and while I was here, I gave James a ring just to see if he was in town, because his parents lived in town as well. And he happened to be here, and we went to Applebee's, and I said, hey, I want to start this company, and can't find anyone to do it with. And he said, well, funny story, I have the same problem. And we decided to give it a go.
Wow, awesome. So in those early days, how did you guys, were you both developers, or how did you end up kind of dividing and conquering?
So we're both developers. I skew more toward the technical side, and he's more, he also writes code, but he's much more skewed toward the business side. In the early days, we both wrote code. As soon as possible, James stopped writing code if he could, and he focused on recruiting, customer development, fundraising, that type of work. And eventually, I had to give up the programming side as well and do management full time. But James was the CEO. I was sort of the CTO, focusing on actually building the products.
So when you shifted gears, were you just a couple people at that point when you actually started Firebase product?
So it was when we started the Firebase product, it was initially, there were 4 of us. It was James and I, and then Vikram, who we met out in the Bay Area, and then a friend of mine from college named Michael. The 4 of us were working together. And then it was about a year period when it was just the 4 of us. And we built and launched the initial version with just the 4 of us.
Had you all moved out San Francisco area at that point?
Yep, we were all in San Francisco. We sat in a tiny little office that it had a window, but the window faced a wall because someone they built the building and then they built a building next door to it, and so I had a window onto a wall. But we got a great discount for that office. But it was the 4 of us. We have some funny pictures of us just kind of crammed into this little office. But yeah, we built the initial version with just the 4 of us. We managed to raise some additional money off of the kind of excitement from that launch. We hired a few more people, and then kind of the rest is history.
So when you were trying to figure out how to go raise money, I assume kind of for the first time, how did that all go? You're dealing with very sophisticated investor types from Silicon Valley that know the game, and you know how to develop and you know how to build a product. Was a bit of a learning curve there? Any stories?
Yeah, there was definitely a learning curve. So the first money that we raised was from a startup incubator called Y Combinator. which is, they sort of specialize in taking like very, very early folks and helping them get started. And then along with that investment, there's some people that co-invest with them. And so we raised about $150,000 between Y Combinator and the other investors there. And mind you, this was 3.5 years in. So at that point, we had managed to fund our own existence based on initially savings and then the credit card debt, essentially, to get to that point. And so it's nice to have someone else putting their money on the line as well at that point. And that $150,000 was enough to hire the 2 other people and get us through another year. So we had 4 people and all the business expenses and whatnot off that. We tried again to raise money in the fall of 2011. And we managed to raise a little bit. There were 2 investors that invested at that time. We tried to raise much more, but we had trouble doing it. The first one was our landlord, who, you know, the quote was something along the lines of like, I don't really know what you guys do or why I want to use it, but you're here every night till 3 a.m., so I want
it. Investors want to invest in people, right?
Yep.
Even more so than they
Yep, worked out very well for him. And then the other one was an alumni from the same school that James went to. He went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and there was a group of people run by this guy that was also from Madison, and I think they were just trying to be nice, but they put some money together and invested, and it also worked out well for them.
Very cool. So with Y Combinator, what were they looking for out of it? When they made their initial investment, are they looking for you just to get customers? Do they want to see some revenue? What are they wanting out of their commitment?
So they actually invested initially on the chat product. So we applied twice to them. Once in the fall of 2010, and were rejected without an interview that time. And then the second time we applied, and at that point the chat product was doing much better, and we were able to show traction. We had a nice growth graph that showed how kind of exponential rise, and we showed revenue coming in, and we made it look like the chat business was a great business, which it really wasn't, but we had data to make it look that way. And that was enough for them to give us a shot. And then while we were there, we decided to do something completely different. Really not as a result of anything that happened, but the timing worked out such that that's when we made that transition.
So you were kind of beyond what Y Combinator was going to do for you when you're out kind of needing to find capital on your own?
Yeah, so I can kind of complete the fundraising story here. So some of the companies will raise money as a result of the demo day that happens at the end of the summer, and we weren't able to do that. And so we did have the money from Y Combinator itself, and then we were able to raise a little bit more in the fall. But the first large fundraising event we had was after the initial launch. So we built this product, we put it out, and it really took off. Actually much more than we expected. It was, if anyone here reads Hacker News, it was sitting at the top of Hacker News at 500 votes, which in 2011 was a lot. And we had thousands of people sign up on this thing. It was all over the news. And so that sort of initial excitement, granted there's no revenue, people aren't building anything real off it, it's just we could demonstrate the demand for this. That was enough for us to get a proper fundraising round put together. And that was still extremely difficult. So I think people get a very skewed, if they go into TechCrunch or Recode or one of these, they get a very skewed view of investment, and the meme right now is it's so easy, everyone can get all the money they want. And the reality is that perception is created by a lot of successful founders trying to make it sound like fundraising is easy, because they want you to think it's easy because they want you to join their company. They want you to think that, hey, if you join their company, they'll be able to raise more money. And they want everyone to think they're super successful. And so everyone who has successfully raised money paints the story of how easy it is. And the reality is it isn't. So the first time we tried to raise money in the fall, those 2 people invested, but James did 50 meetings. It was a huge number of no's. Almost everyone. The 2 that invested were, like I said, our landlord and this alone. It wasn't these VCs. And then in the spring, we said, you know what? We can't afford, we're almost out of money, we can't afford to have this not go well. So we're going to pull all the stuff. So both James and I went out on the fundraising this time, and we just played a numbers game. We pitched, we set up the pitches such that we had 7 pitches a day. So we would do 4 in-persons and 3 phone calls. We'd have 1 between each of the meetings, and we did that all day, every day for 4 weeks. And the reason we did that is because there's there's a bit of game theory here. Investors don't want to be looking at a deal that's been sitting out there for a while, right? If it's been 3 months and been trying to fundraise and they can't get any money, they think, oh, there's something wrong, maybe there's some piece of diligence that I haven't seen, maybe there's something I'm missing and they don't want to invest. And so you want to create the perception that there's time pressure, this is a hot deal, that like you got to get in now. And one way to do that is to legitimately get a hot deal. The other way to do it is to like pitch so many people that one of those people is going to crack, and then the other people are going to want to invest, and that's what happened. So the first investment in that round that we closed was some guy in Israel that we'd never met in person that found us online, and James called him up and he called him on the phone, and he put a $100,000 check, and then we emailed out all the other millions of people that we talked to, and they said, hey, like, it's happening, we got the first investors, by tomorrow afternoon it's going to be done, you got to get it right now. And that kind of worked. They said, okay, yes, let's do it. And so we managed to get commitments for a $1.1 million investment within a matter of about 30 days. And then we have a blog post. It's a little disingenuous, but like there's a blog post if you look on our blog in, I think it's May of 2012, where we talk about our fundraising success and how quickly we did it and how easy it was. That's probably the story. You're right.
Interesting. So during this time, I remember that the whole Parse-ling was going on, and Parse, the company, and I got to believe there had to be, like they were on your radar, or you were directly competing.
It's kind of a funny story. So Parse, Meteor, Realm, Mongo Lab, and a couple other developer products, Segment.io, we were all in the same Y Combinator batch. So we all knew each other, we had dinner together every week. I'm not sure why so many of these developer products came together at the same time. The reality is most of those actually weren't doing what they were doing during that summer. So Meteor, if you're familiar with Meteor, the whole summer they were working on like a travel advisor, like a vacation travel advisor type app. It wasn't until the second to last day of the summer they decided to do this developer product. Most of those guys they pivoted and they did something else later on. But yeah, we definitely were aware of the folks at Parse. Some of the ex-Parse folks are actually on my team now at Google. I think they did a great job. It was a very impressive product. We definitely learned some stuff from watching them do what they did.
So what do you? I never really got the story about what happened. Facebook acquired Parse and then they shut it down, or they?
Yeah. So they.
Did you ever understand why?
They sold to Facebook in summer of 2013 or so, a bit ahead of us. I obviously wasn't at Facebook, and I've heard rumors, but I'd rather not comment on that sort of thing.
It's a pretty tightly kept story about what happened. But anyway, yeah, that's when I actually remember hearing and really understanding that Firebase was going to be something as kind of the whole. When Parse announced they were out, and people from Parse were saying, I'm joining Google, or I'm joining the Firebase team.
Yep. It was in some ways a good thing for us, in some ways a bad thing for us. So obviously it's helpful if a bunch of customers want to come over and use our products, and so we did our best to try to onboard those folks. But it also, I think, created a lot of fear in the community of using cloud services, because Parse, by all measures, was a very successful thing. A lot of people used it, and it's still vaporized. And so a lot of people said, well, what if this is next or that's next? I am very confident in the future of Firebase at Google, because it is so deeply tied into the other things that Google does. It's very deeply tied to the Google Cloud Platform, which is a big initiative for them. It's very deeply tied into ads, so the Firebase Analytics product is the way that you do ads attribution at Google, and Google does a lot of advertising. It's the way you distribute AdMob, so it's very tightly tied into all the major businesses at Google, and so I wouldn't be worried about that.
So how did the acquisition by Google come along? Was that just, were you actually looking to be acquired, or were you looking to grow and merge somehow, or what was happening?
We were not looking to be acquired. It's a little bit of a funny story. So we've been approached a number of times by a bunch of folks in the space over the course of a couple of years. And in late 2013, we were we raised our Series A. So after the $1.1 million fundraise, the next year we actually had launched a paid product. We started getting so we had launched a public product. We started getting some like real apps building real things on it, and we raised a $5.6 million Series A from Union Square Ventures and Flaggers Capital Partners, who were the same investors in people like MongoDB and Twilio. So we had a bigger chunk of money, and we started recruiting much more aggressively. So we started ramping the team up. And in late 2013, we started trying to poach some people from Google. And I had some pretty funny meetings. I actually had at one point, I had every Friday, I'd go to Google, I'd identify the people I wanted to recruit, and I'd just go to Google and like have coffee with them at Google, and be like, hey,
drink their coffee.
Drink their coffee and then try to steal their engineers. This actually happened, this is a real thing. It's funny, after I came to Google, the recruiters there said, hey, can you tell me how we can get some of these people to decide not to go start us in Google instead? And I was like, well, I know how to do the opposite, but I'm not sure how to do that. So, but we actually started trying to recruit some of these people from Google, and one of those people said, hey, I know you're trying to get me to come to Firebase. I think you guys should come here instead. And he introduced us to a bunch of the directors and VPs there, and we started having a conversation. And then in, I think, March or so, we got a phone call from business development, and they said, hey, would you like to come to Google? And we said no a couple times, but then eventually we said yes.
So at that time, was it pretty clear they were looking for a real-time database kind of angle, or were they developing it internally themselves, or did they just really become aware of that kind of capability
so
how it might fit?
They were very aware of us because a lot of the customers of cloud were also using our software. And in general, mobile is sort of obviously huge right now, but even in 2014, it was not the focus for everyone yet. And so they were really trying to pivot into mobile in a big way, and it turned out that our technology the database technology was really useful for mobile because it had this sync approach, which made it really good for offline access and for like poor network connection situations. And so a combination of they had seen their customers using it, and it was good for this mobile use case, made it very appealing to Google. And they had at that point the cloud platform product was still a pretty early offering, and they had launched some really cool stuff, but they didn't yet have kind of the developer mindshare that they would like, and so they were looking to bring in both our technology and our customer base, but then also some of the expertise in marketing, which it turns out one of the things that we got really good at is getting the word out to the developer community, and so we've been helping Google with that as well.
So how did you come up with the Firebase name?
That's a bit of a funny story. The original code name. So when the first version of Firebase, the first code was written in the fall of 2011, and at the time we thought, we should make up a name for this thing that's so bad that we're sure to change it later because we don't want to fall in love with this thing and then change it. So the original code name for the thing was Plankton. The idea being that it will eventually be as ubiquitous as plankton is in the ocean. We had that for like 3 or 4 months, the code name was just Plankton, and we said, okay, it's time to come up with a real name. And we went out and we made a list of all the names that we thought would be reasonable, and then we went and tried to buy those domain names, which I'm sure some of you have done. And it turns out that every domain name is taken, and the ones that aren't taken, even the absurd ones, are extremely expensive. So like one of the ones we looked at getting was coconut.com. I don't know why we thought coconut was a good name, but we're like, you know what, it's memorable, maybe a good name. And they were asking $1 million for it. And we played all kinds of crazy games. Like I did this thing where I always buy domain names under a pseudonym. Like we start the negotiations under a pseudonym because I don't want them to look at our fundraising history and say, oh, they've raised millions of dollars, so we should raise the price on that. So I do it under a fake name. And I remember one time I had emailed someone with a domain name, and they called me. I put my phone number in there, called me on my cell phone. I answered the phone and said, hi, this is Andrew. And they say, hi, I'm looking for Connor Smith to talk about this domain name. And I was like, oh, shoot, like he already knows I'm Andrew. I can't suddenly say, just kidding, my name is Connor Smith. And I can't fake voices very well, so what do? And I hadn't told James about this at all. Like he didn't know that I was doing this under a pseudonym or that I was working on this domain name. I I was just working on this. And so I went, I said, give me one moment. I put it on mute. I went over to James. I said, James, your name is Connor Smith. You've been bidding on this domain name. Go. So I gave him the phone. I said, hello, this is Connor. And it was, I think the best part of that call was at one point, James was trying to play hardball negotiation. I could hear the guy on the other end of the phone saying, look, Connor. But after trying to buy out this domain name, it didn't work. We couldn't get any of the names we picked, we couldn't get a domain name. And so we said, first, well, what if we just go with Plankton? Like, we can actually, like, there's an aquaculture firm, like, that owns this domain name, and I'm sure they'd be willing to sell it. It's probably not important to their business. Maybe we can just go with Plankton. And for a while, the team was, like, ready to do that. And I said, no, like, we picked this name because it was so bad. And so we made a reverse list, and we said, not what are the names we want, what are the domain names we think we could actually get? So we went and we looked online, like, which ones are for sale, or which ones, like, look like they're not really in use, and we just made a long list, and then we went and we bid on all of them, right? And we just started at a low price, and we sort of raised the price on all of them until some of them cracked. And the first one, incredibly, that cracked was Firebase.
Interesting story. So now, within Google, you look at the Firebase. It's become a brand. It's got a lot more than what you put in to start with. Google's developed out, I'm sure with some of your help, a lot of different offerings. So did you envision when Google was, they decided to acquire, you agreed that this Firebase was going to become this kind of mobile marketing, mobile development brand?
To some extent, yes and no. So by the time that we were acquired by Google, we had already made the decision that we weren't just going to be this database product, that we were going to be a platform for app development. So we had 3 products. We had the database, we had an authentication product, and we had a hosting product. And they could all be used independently. Turns out most people started with the database and then added some other things in, but they were standalone products. And when we came to Google, the pitch from Google was to build out kind of a more comprehensive mobile platform. And we were actually, at the time, we were heavily web, and we had mobile offerings, but they were younger and they were still growing. And so part of the transition to Google was an agreement that we were going to really double down on mobile, and that we were going to expand the offering. And there were some really obvious ones that we wanted to do. So for example, we wanted to do push applications, we wanted to do analytics, we were thinking about doing crash reporting. There were a bunch of these things that we wanted to do. And when we got to Google, we initially set about kind of just on our own with our own team, thinking about what's the 5-year roadmap where we start to build out some of these things. And within a few months, other teams at Google started forming together into a group to do a bunch of these other things. It turned out this was a pretty big deal across Google. And rather than us taking a long time with our small team to build all these, we ended up consolidating that whole group across all of Google for things like messaging, for crash reporting, for advertising, et cetera, and turning that into Firebase. So the Firebase product that exists today we have 17 products. Some of those came into the acquisition. Some of them have been built since then by my team, but a lot of them were other Google teams that were pulled in, and they integrated with our SDKs, they integrated with our UIs, but the core technologies may have been existing at Google already or in development for a long time.
Interesting. So Crashlytics was an acquisition by Twitter. Remember that one?
Yep. So
you made some build versus buy kind of decisions along the way. These different components.
So with Crash Reporting, we had an initial Crash offering that we launched in 2016 at I/O, and then actually earlier this year we actually acquired Fabric from Twitter. So now we have the number 1 and number 2 most popular Crash Reporting solutions are Crashlytics and Firebase Crash Reporting.
They're merging them together then?
So yes, that's the intention. We're trying to bring those together into one.
So maybe, why don't I open it up, just, do people have questions they want to ask you before I keep going with mine? Because I'm certainly, all right.
We got one back there.
Oh, there we go. So,
I was really excited about the announcement of Cloud Store. And I was wondering if you see that as a different use case than the real-time database or more of a successor, and if there are different use cases, how do you view those as being differently valuable?
Thank you for the softball. Yeah, so if you haven't heard, we announced a new database product just a few weeks ago called Cloud Firestore. And this is something I am very excited about personally because it is the longest development, it is the largest development project I've ever worked on. It's the most investment we've ever made in the product. It is something that we started basically immediately after we came to Google, and it's been in development ever since. And that gives you an idea of like the scope of this thing. And the goal of the project was basically, we had the real-time database, which for people that love it, they love it. It's like, it's real time, it's really easy to use, it's super simple. Like I heard you mention earlier, you made a comment, I think, unintentionally, but like, we use Firebase, but then we also use a real database for these other things. And this was something we heard over and over again, and usually what people mean by a real database is something that like, I can run a query on, for example. Turns out people like to do this. And we did add some of those features into the real-time database over time, but the queries were very simple. The performance of that was pretty poor. Like all of the query operations on Firebase real-time database are table scans. And so if you have like a million items in a list and you want to get the last 10, it's going to take us a little while to process that. It also had some issues with data model where it had this nice hierarchy, but because we didn't allow a shallow query operation, you couldn't really use the hierarchy very effectively without having some bad performance characteristics. There was a long list of issues. And there were also some operational concerns that some of the bigger companies had. So one of them is that the architecture for the real-time database is something that makes it a zonal service. It runs out of a single data center. And to make it something that is multi-region replicated turns out to be incredibly difficult, on the order of like, you gotta rewrite the thing. And so we came in and said, hey, really, there's a class of customers that they want complicated queries, that wants a data model that's more conducive to some of the things they want to do, that wants multi-region replication for some of these like really high reliability systems. What if we could take the best Google technologies and rebuild a new system that has all those attributes and then also has a lot of the stuff that the Firebase real-time database does? And that's what Cloud Firestore is. It is the sort of culmination of that effort of saying, what if we had real queries, what if we had real indexes, what if we had multi-region replication, and then what if we also went in and rewrote all the cool Firebase components and made them better. So the SDKs are significantly more powerful. The security rules language is a much cleaner language that's designed for like a lot more features of the future. We have a functions integration that provides like stronger guarantees than the real-time database, etc. It's a really cool product. I'd check it out. It's in beta right now, but it works, and the growth has been awesome. A lot of people are using it. The feedback's been great. So I'd check that out.
So is Firestore built on? I mean, I'm sure it's built on a lot of Google technology that was there. Is it layered on anything in particular that we would know, like data store or Bigtable?
It is. So it is. There's no Firebase acquisition code in it. It's all rewritten. Every line of code is new. It is built on Google technologies. The team that built it, it was a collaboration between our team and the Cloud Data Store team. And so we came in. I have this really funny email actually from before the acquisition where they asked me like, hey, what would it look like to rebuild a Firebase real-time database on top of Google technologies? And I said, hey, what we should do is take the Data Store app, and we should add in all of these things. And it's funny to look at that because in some cases I was right, in some cases I was way off. But that's what ended up happening. So the Data Store team and our team worked together to build this new product, and it is using a lot of the technologies from Data Store, although a lot of stuff got rebuilt.
So it's not necessarily layered on top of Data Store.
It's not layered on top of Data Store.
Is it layered on top of Bigtable?
I don't want to get into the lower levels of the stack. It uses a bunch of stuff from Google, but if I found often that when I go into the details of the stack, people make assumptions about how the thing works. And the reality is, like, it provides a set of guarantees that are sort of unique to Firestore. We try to capture those in the docs the best we can.
So would you recommend anybody building something new that is beyond something very simple to go right to Firestore?
So the long-term intention of Firestore is it is intended to be the best database for mobile app development of any size. To give you just a little bit of data point here, Data Store, so the technology that we started with to build this is the database for Snapchat. It's the database for Pokemon Go. It's the database for like a bunch of Nintendo apps, and a whole bunch of other stuff you've probably heard of. It is like one of the highest scale systems in existence, and handles like ridiculous load. So during the beta for Firestore has a lot of new components, so we're kind of scaling them up gradually. So during the beta, there's some limits in the website that we publish. So it's not, we're not supporting Snapchat on Firestore today, but the intention is that we would over time. That we will be recommending this for the absolute biggest apps in the world to run real production workloads on this thing. And it should have the feature set for to support those types of workloads as well.
So there's a lot of options with data stores, databases under Google's platform today.
Yep.
So how is an architect supposed to decide what to use when? I mean, on the one hand, we know we want the offline kind of capabilities of what Firestore gives us, or if we have a web front end or mobile app that we don't have to worry about that really complex syncing that goes on between the front end and the back end, because that's a huge problem solved. So we know we want to use Firebase, but then what if I have a very sophisticated data model and is Firestore my entire store, or do I need to be thinking about how to use these different types of databases in conjunction?
Right.
Can you explain that in 2 minutes or less?
Yes. So yes, there are a lot of data storage technologies out there, and it turns out that we had, when we started building the Firebase real-time database, the original vision was we're going to build the data storage solution to solve all the problems. Like let's list all the problems and then solve all the problems. And
Like everything Spanner does. And
well, Spanner, I don't think even existed at the time, right? But we'll list all the customer problems. We'll solve all those at all the infinite scale and infinite performance, and it'll be super cheap to run. Anyone who's been in the space for any amount of time thinks that's hysterical now, which it is. You can't build the best storage system. They have trade-offs, and you pick the trade-offs that you want. The strength of Firestore is in the mobile feature set. So it is designed to allow direct access from an end user device without you having to do all the stuff in the app server. And because you can have that direct access, we can provide a bunch of really cool features for you. So one of those that's often overlooked but is really important is the authentication and authorization model that we have. We manage your authentication for you, and we have domain-specific language that allows you to specify what each user is allowed to do in your system in some really powerful ways. And it allows you to take all of your security logic and put it in just like a few short rules. So rather than you relying on not having any bugs in your app server, you can define all your access control in one place. You can upload that, and we can give you some very strong guarantees about the security of your data, which is super powerful, and it's also super fast. You can get going a lot faster. We have a synchronization system that allows you to be very bandwidth efficient. So rather than a traditional app, every time you pull to refresh, it's going to go grab all your data. We can be much smarter about that. You can just pull the stuff you want, which on a mobile network is pretty important. Your users don't really want to pay for a bunch of bandwidth. They don't want to wait for stuff. We also can give you offline access to your data. So you don't even have to be connected. And then we have all the real-time stuff, which is what people usually talk about, but that's only kind of part of the story. So we'll do the real-time push updates. And then we have the tie-ins to cloud functions, which is really popular for, if you don't have that app server in the way, how do I run code? Well, you can still run code, you tie into cloud functions, and you run the code that way. So if you are looking to build an app that has any of those offline characteristics that you want real-time updates for, that you want to be efficient with bandwidth, we can help you a lot with that. If your application is purely server-side, it comes down to more of a question of what sort of data model do I want to work with, and what sort of performance characteristics do I want. So the Firestore it's a NoSQL database. It has a documents and collections type structure. It can do some interesting queries, but not nearly as much as something like Cloud Spanner. And so I would think about what the data model is I want. It does provide some nice performance guarantees. So because of the limited set of queries that it provides and some of the indexing behavior that it has queries that perform with the size of the result set, not the size of the data. So no matter how large your collection is, if you're loading 10 documents, it will always take roughly the same amount of time, which is not true necessarily for some other types of data storage. So that's a very common reason people want to use something like data store or Firestore, is that you have something that you want to elastically scale with some guarantees. So it provides that. It also has a pricing model that is very conducive to sort of small and medium-sized app development. So if you're using something like Cloud Spanner as an example, or Amazon's DynamoDB, you have to provision capacity. And so like Spanner does it by nodes, DynamoDB does it by ops, I think. But you have to sort of project what your peaks and troughs are going to look like, and you have to prepay for that. And Firestore is just straight pay per use. So every document you write, every document you read, we charge you for it and nothing more, which can be very convenient, especially if you're just getting started.
So in a complex product, would you expect then that people are going to end up perhaps using Firestore for, that'll be in the architectural picture as well as some other stores? I mean, think about a complex microservices architecture where I've kind of taken some of the responsibilities, divided them out, and I've got teams working on those individual components, but it's all got to kind of come together.
I expect to see every architecture you can imagine. Like I've talked with a lot of customers that you might imagine, and they build all kinds of crazy stuff. With the Firebase real-time database, what we saw was small apps and apps with very specific use cases would use us exclusively. But the vast majority of the apps of any interesting size would use us in combination with some other data storage technologies.
Okay.
And in those cases, Firebase, the database would only handle either certain portions of the data, like the stuff that need to be real time, or they would replicate. And they'd have some other master database and they replicate the database. And with Firestore, what we're trying to do is to make sure that that Firestore, people are comfortable and have the features that they need for it to be the source of truth. So for that to be the master database. And so there's no longer a need for replication in that case. This doesn't mean it's going to solve everything that you want. So as an example, it's not really designed for analytical workloads. If you want to go and you want to do a bunch of complex analysis and generate some graphs about how your business is doing, it won't help you with that. Whereas something like BigQuery will help you a lot with that sort of thing. So my hope is that with Firestore, what we'll see is the need for fewer of those data storage technologies. Maybe you can consolidate rather than having RTDB and data store, you can just have Firestore. But we still built it with the assumption in mind that people are going to be plugging in all of their own stuff in the server side as well. So we actually there's a more comprehensive set of server-side SDKs for Firestore than there was the real-time database. So we do 4 languages rather than 2. We have the functions integration, which is going to be a big part of that. And we're really expecting some of these larger apps to be using it in concert with Spanner, BigQuery, etc. Yeah.
So I'm on a startup team here in the Twin Cities, and we use Firebase, and we're starting to go away from it, mainly because we started out, I came onto the team, we had an existing application, Rails, MySQL, that sort of thing, and we tried to replicate data into the real-time database. We haven't played around with Firestore yet. And one of the gaps that I saw, bringing on like an existing app and then wrapping Firebase around it, was just this kind of change detection capture and getting things that maybe your canonical database is this MySQL database or Postgres or something, getting those into the real-time database. Is that a gap that Google is looking at for the Firebase?
So you're talking in this case that you wanted to replicate from your existing database into the real-time database?
Yeah.
And you wanted more features to support that?
Yep. We're looking at a tool now called Debusium, which is based on Kafka and Zookeeper and some binlog watching and stuff like that. But
I think I would have to know more about your particular setup to know what the good solution would be for copying data in. But for the other way, if you're using, say, for Firestore, and actually now with the real-time database, if you want to replicate data out, we're actually intending functions to be able to do that. So with Firestore and also very recently with Cloud Functions, we now can guarantee at least that the function will run. So if you have some sort of write operation that happens on Cloud Firestore, we can guarantee that function will get run for you, and that function can do the replication that you need. And so that's actually one of the use cases we're looking into, where every time a write happens, you want to go and copy it somewhere else. It doesn't necessarily help you on the ingestion side as much, but if you want to export it, yeah. We also have, on the real-time database, we have nightly backups that we'll do for you. We can automate, we'll take your old database, we'll put it on GCS, and you can use that. That's That's really designed more for either for your own backups or for analytical work where you want to like do some querying on that. But because it's nightly, you can't necessarily rely on that for like live serving.
Any other questions?
Not completely awesome question. So at least once in the past month, there was an outage on Cloud Functions.
Okay.
Do you have any advice for how we should handle like critical tasks running on Cloud Functions, like things that are data syncs that are external? Like, is there plans for some way to like replay things that?
Yeah. So first, sorry about that. I'm well aware of the outage you're talking about. I think. I hope I'm aware of that outage. I'm well aware of one outage. I would decouple. There's sort of two different reliabilities that you care about. One of them is the reliability of the actual execution environment, and that's the thing that went down in this case, where functions stopped running. Okay. The other one is the reliability of the creation of the events, and the first part is the reality is the beta product, and it's not super reliable, and I'm sorry, we're working on it, but we will. The goal is to get to something that is truly reliable that you can count on. On the event generation side, the reliability varies by the product, and so if you're looking at something like the real-time database or Cloud Firestore, we have a technical implementation that should guarantee the delivery of events. We don't actually guarantee it. So if you look at our website, we say we don't count on this, but the technical implementation guarantees them. And as we go into general availability for those products, like we will guarantee the delivery of those events. And those events, when you have an outage on the compute side, the events don't go away. So those persist for like 30 days, I think. Like it would have to be more than a 30-day outage before we like start dropping things, which is not going to happen. And so that's true today. Like when you have an outage in Cloud Functions, those will all queue up and then they'll run later. That's not true for all the event providers. So if you hook up to, as an example right now, if you hook up to the analytics service and you get events generated through that, we don't actually guarantee you get all the events. You'll get most of them. But in that particular case, I think so far we've deemed it less important because with analytics, you're often dropping things anyways, and so if you get most of them, it's probably okay. And over time, what we're going to be doing is trying to roll out more guarantees to more of those services, both along the lines of getting it eventually and also complete performance guarantees.
Awesome. So long term, don't worry about those, and if you're building something with like an HTTP trigger, like that's different. Like analytics and HTTP, just you can't expect that.
So, well, what you could, if you're trying to run functions through HTTP today, what I would actually recommend that you do is just queue something up on PubSub, because you can run functions on PubSub, and PubSub will persist. And so have the HTTP trigger, or seriously use something like Cloud Firestore. So you could have a collection that's like my pending operations, and you add something in there, and those will trigger events, and those events are both guaranteed and they're saved, and they'll eventually get run. And then in your Cloud Function, you can go and you can delete the reference in the Firestore, and so you can even go look, and you can say, okay, which one of these actually got run? This is actually a very common use case to actually use the database as your queue for like local processing.
A question back here?
Got a softball for you. What's the best way to provide feedback on the beta products, both functions and the new Firestore?
Well, the easiest way is to email me.
Directly?
I'm just Andrew@firebase.com. More seriously, if it is a bug report or a feature request or that type of thing, we have a support service on our website, so you can, there's a tab under there somewhere, click support, there's like a form on the webpage you can fill out. That's probably the most direct way. You can also post stuff on, this is less for feedback, this is more for questions, but we do monitor Stack Overflow. We have, our team does it, so if you put something on there and you tag it with Firebase or Cloud Firestore or something, we will see that, and that will eventually get filtered into our system. Or if there's people that you know, you can just drop an email too.
Cool. Other questions?
So I've been playing around with the Google Assistant, Google Actions, and in order to do the authentication for Google Actions, request that I have to set up a OAuth server. So do you think there's any possibility I can use Firebase authentication instead of OAuth?
I wish I knew the answer to that. Maybe? maybe eventually. So the same team that's working on Firebase Auth is also the one doing the stuff you're talking about, but I don't know their specific plans.
All right, I think we'll try to wrap it up here, and if there's more questions, I had one more question for you, Andrew. Having gone through this myself, where you are in a big company, and then you go to a startup where it's 2 people getting everything done, and you wear all the hats, or many of the hats, and then you find yourself back in a big company again, like Google. Have you kind of figured out like where you fit? Like what do I really love to do? What am I passionate about? And what are all those hats that I don't have to wear anymore? Where have you kind of found yourself in your transition into a much bigger team?
Yeah, that's a good question. When Google has this concept called like ladders, there's job descriptions. Basically, there's software engineers, and there's program managers, and there's product managers, and there's a whole bunch of these, right? And when we were going through the acquisition, as a startup, we didn't have engineers. There were people that worked there, and they worked on stuff. We didn't need any of those titles. And so I remember them asking me, like, hey, please describe your job to us, and we'll figure out what category you're in. And so I said, well, okay, I clean the office. I do payroll. I spend a lot of time on legal work with our lawyers. I went through all the things, and they're just looking at me weird. And I got to the end, like, also I designed some of our products, and they go, engineering, great, cool. And it's been a little bit of a strange experience because I think my sort of expertise and skill set is in bringing together a bunch of disciplines to provide a developer experience that's good. So we want to make sure that everything from the software actually works and is reliable to we have the tools to support it to we have documentation that makes sense to marketing. That's kind of where I sit. So technically I'm an engineering manager at Google. In practice I do lots of things across lots of disciplines and bring those together. I don't know if it necessarily fits into the Google mold, but that's how I've stayed doing that sort of a role.
Yeah. And that you've kind of found a place that's what you like doing?
Yeah.
All right, so last question. Anything you can tell us about, we can turn the cameras up if you want, but anything, what's coming next? What should we expect out of Firebase? Is there anything you can tell us beyond the recent Firestore announcement?
I can't really, but you should watch. There's a Dev Summit on Tuesday, so we'll be every year we have a Firebase branded summit. This one's in Amsterdam this year, and we'll be presenting a bunch of stuff and launching some projects, and you should tune in.
Awesome. All right, well, let's give Andrew a huge round of applause for his